Ao longo de muitos anos, essa agressão crônica, em alguns de nós, vai cobrar um preço. E isso vai chamar redução da expectativa de vida. Uma cidade como São Paulo, mais ou menos 2 anos a menos. É o que a gente calcula em função da poluição do ar.
In order to sustain its growth in a responsible and efficient way, Brazil is taking advantage of the opportunity with the upcoming global events to invest heavily in the modernization and expansion of a new transportation infrastructure and implementation of certain measures to continue reducing its transportation emissions. As it currently stands, Brazil has just reached the minimum requirements for the short-term influx of people on the roads and on public transit in urban areas, and many stadiums were completed behind schedule. The central government has already struggled to offset the rising fiscal burdens by auctioning off infrastructure projects to the private sector, which has less than positive implications for the long-term goals and has been a source of civil unrest. The projects aim to increase the efficiency and capacity of land transportation infrastructure while decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. However, if the government continues to encourage individualized motor transport through its current infrastructure investment policies, the rate of emissions reduction will cease as demand for transportation increases. Brazil has experienced unremitting problems with their land transportation infrastructure, where it attempts to operate with approximately 200 million inhabitants. Taking into account the rapid pace of urbanization and the upcoming FIFA World Cup and Olympic Games, Brazil's transportation infrastructure must be expanded in a sustainable manner in order to remain competitive in the global economy. As of 2012, 63% of cities in Brazil have more than 300,000 people using illegal, unsafe, and unreliable means of transportation on a daily basis. People spend an average of 3 to 6 hours a day traveling to and from work or school. With the FIFA World Cup occurring June 12th to July 13th, there are only months between Brazil and the influx of tourists coming to use their previously clogged and dysfunctional transportation systems. With a GDP of $2.253 trillion, Brazil boasts the largest economy in South America. The 5 largest cities by population are Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Salvador, Brasilia, and Fortaleza. These larger cities are interconnected via roadways and rail systems that have to support their large populations as well as their economic activity. As of 2012, metro rail systems in cities, the second most used means of public transportation, must withstand 6 million people daily. 85% of Brasilia uses bus rapid transit, demonstrating the need to make these systems efficient, sustainable, and affordable to a rapidly growing urban population. In addition, the country has the 4th largest area of roads in comparison to the world, but only 14% of them are paved.
Although Brazil's road system is the 4th largest in the world, it cannot withstand the amount of people that will be in the country during World Cup. The 1.4 billion reals that the government currently invests in its infrastructure is just 1.5% of GDP compared to a global average of 3.8%. Stock of infrastructure is valued at just 16% of GDP, compared with 71% in other larger economies. If population continues to urbanize rapidly and spending remains at the same levels, emissions will increase, and increasing stress on the current infrastructure will deplete the portion that is usable, increasing maintenance costs for the government. Clearly, Brazil faces significant challenges. Commuting and passenger transport in Brazil's largest cities is insufficient to support a growing middle class, and the long-term cost of current transportation infrastructure is on the rise due to decreasing stocks of fossil fuels. As only 14% of the country drives and 85% of the population is urbanized, there is a heavy dependence on public transport. Fortunately, this provides an opportunity for low-emissions methods of transportation and therefore a decreased economic dependence on unsustainable resources. Other than by car or individualized motor transport, there are 3 major methods of transportation while available in Brazil: the bus rapid transit or BRT system, metro rails and subways, and air travel. BRT, but better known by most Brazilians as omnibus, presents an environmentally and economically sustainable method of transport for developed urban environments, but are currently less than sufficient. The buses do not run on a time schedule and are also a main source of traffic within the country. Unfortunately, BRT varies from region to region and is only in full service in 10 cities in Brazil and is certainly not up to the publicized World Cup standards. The underground subway system, metrô, is the most efficient way of getting around in most cities, but is inflexible, which will present problems long-term as cities expand and change shape at unprecedented speeds. In order to capitalize on the benefits offered by BRT, the government must pursue policies to encourage private sector investment in order to improve the efficiency of these systems and reduce their costs to their users. The government cannot afford to both implement these systems and operate them efficiently. In 2008, the government launched Phase 1 of its Growth Acceleration Program by investing 58.3 billion reals, 33.4 billion in highways, 10.6 in the merchant navy, 7.9 billion in railways, 3 billion in airports, 2.7 reals in ports, and 700 million reals on public waterways. While some have cited the increased employment opportunities and company subsidies as a major contributory factor in assisting in Brazil's accelerated recovery, at the target completion date of March 2010, only 63% of the public funding was spent. Auctions to the private sector were less than fruitful, and plans still emphasize individual motorized transport over public systems with less emissions. Adding more roadways will only increase the stock of cars. While the government has made passes at providing sustainable infrastructure development, truly sustainable methods require reduced reliance on individualized motor transport with public transportation systems operated by the private sector in order to reduce government spending, reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and efficiently transport growing numbers of passengers in Brazil.
Audio Jungle.
Worldwide, transportation makes up 23% of total greenhouse gases emitted. Although Brazil has succeeded in lowering the amount of greenhouse gases emitted by 39%, the upcoming international events and growing middle-class demand for transportation looks to threaten this progress. During the World Cup, Brazil is expected to emit a little under 3 million tons of carbon emissions. This figure is double that of what emissions were emitted during the South African World Cup. Around 90% of the gases emitted will be created by traveling between the different soccer games. Certain bus rapid transit systems in Brazil have proven to be a success by limiting the usage of personal vehicles and cutting costs on fuel by members of the population using this transportation. However, the bus rapid transit does not service all areas of Brazil, so it cannot be seen as the only hope in limiting the amount of harmful gases emitted by the World Cup. Brazil also plans to increase its usage of alternate forms of energy. These include solar panels and wind farms.
The cost of maintaining the transportation infrastructure in Brazil amounted to approximately $6.66 billion per year in 2008. Of this sum, approximately $6.24 billion went towards the expansion of individual motor transport infrastructure, and only approximately $0.42 billion went for collective transport. Of the 28.1 million tons of local and greenhouse effect pollutants generated by passenger transportation in the year 2008, 18.3 million, or approximately 65% of total emissions, were produced by IMT, while collective transport emitted just 9.8 million tons. Demographic trends in developing Brazil clearly demonstrate an urgent need for the sustainable development of transportation infrastructure, but the government is already facing unsustainable amounts of spending. Rising government debt has led the country to inflation, and along with a high corporate tax rate, discouraged private sector investment. According to one study of so-called conservationist transportation policies encouraging, among other things, the expansion of the BRT systems to support urban populations, in addition to measures to reduce individualized motor transport by 30%, demonstrates that by 2020 it is possible to avoid almost 41,500 tons of emissions and save over $30 billion and $26 billion in external transportation and infrastructure costs, respectively. In addition, they would save more than 35 million tons of oil equivalents in energy consumption. The implications here are widespread. By opening up the public transportation systems to international competition and discouraging individualized motor transport through tax reform, government spending outlook and daily commute would be remarkably different in Brazil.
Audio Jungle.